Hi, I'm Craig.
And I'm Eric.
And this week, Kyle's away, so we're bringing you the tasting. Right, so last week we learned about stouts, and this week we're going to do everything that's not stouts.
And there's no shenanigans with adding graham crackers and marshmallow or any of that weirdness.
That was last week. And Kyle had his ode to IPAs, and this is going to be our love letter to those things that are malt forward.
First up, we have the 24-2 from Blindman Brewing in Lacombe. We've got a beautiful, rich brown ale. This is a returning brew for them, but this recipe is featuring Red Shed malting malts, which are making this an all Alberta product.
Next is the absolute genius British ale, Appleton's from Hoyne's Brewing. That's in Victoria.
This is easily the most underappreciated ale in the shop. This is really special that we get to make this part of the tasting. We're really looking forward to that.
After that, we've got this crazy, most beautiful can art ever, the Blackstone Porter from Driftwood.
Blackstone is a wonderfully rich, deep, complex porter. Really happy to see that on the table.
And then the final beer to round out the entire set is Dark Matter. And no one admits, including the brewer, what dark matter is. So we're going to talk lots about that in this week's tasting.
It's dark, it's fascinating, and we're very curious what you're going to think about it.
February 23rd, 6 p.m., $20, complete steel.
And we'll see you there.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to, I'm Craig.
And I'm Eric.
And this is our tasting. We're at Andrew Hilton Wine and Spirits here in Lethbridge. And we're going to have some fun with our little ode to malts tonight. So we understand that the beer tasting sold very well, but a few of you are not going to get everything tonight. We've sold them out completely of the Hoyne's Appleton, which is just terrible news, but more's coming on Friday, so not to despair. We will have more beer for you coming up, for those of you that are going to miss it. But we'll talk about it, number 2 in the ordering tonight.
I don't know that we actually mentioned Andrew Hilton when we did the promo last week, and I felt kind of bad for that, but I figured that it is number 89, right?
It is number 89.
Number 89. We should probably be all clued into the promos and work it that way.
Yeah. Well, and I haven't seen anything from Kyle so far in the comments, but we are awaiting his emergence. So he's promised to chirp us heartily tonight. We're looking forward to the candor. Never all that worried about Kyle, to be quite honest, but. We're going to have fun. Anyway, and...
we should probably introduce what you brought with us.
Oh, yes, the clock. We do have a clock. I don't know if you can see the clock.
Yeah, I'll get it.
We got a clock cam.
There's clock.
So we have the clock cam. We have the clock Kent.
Clock Kent.
The Superman of clocks to keep us on time. So we're going to go for 15 minutes of beer so that we don't all end up slobbering by the end of this, which is, I do believe, the main objective of most of the tastings as far as Kyle's concerned. Like last week, we were, 3 beers in at 26 minutes, and some of us were just trying to catch our breath.
He was very excitable, and that enthusiasm is great. And we've got our little helper, though. That's great.
Okay, so let's get rolling with the first beer in the glass tonight.
All right.
So we're going to go first up with 24-2.
This is Blindman Brewing's brown ale. On their website, they're talking a lot about stock ales, but the can in front of us says brown ale, so we're going to stick to that. But we are looking at the 3rd year that they have brewed this, and it is, as we advertised in the promo, the most Alberta beer on the table.
Everything here is Alberta. They also have, just for those that are interested, for the 24-2, there is a beer that Blindman is brewing now in their barrel-aged program. And if you get the opportunity to pick one up, it's still called 24-2, but it's called a stock ale. That's the one they're yammering on about. A little higher alcohol content. They don't have any currently here in the store, probably because they sold out. It's so unbelievably good.
And what were the barrels that they're keeping those?
They were in bourbon barrels, which lent a beautiful spicy flavor to the beer. It was I had one last week. It was absolutely awesome. Anyways, cheers everyone. First beer up. So we get to do the Kyle thing, just here nosing our beer for half an hour without drinking it.
Let that clock tick on.
Aaron will tell us if we're taking too long.
Now with brown ales in my head, I think of it being a little more delicate or a little less aggressive in the nose, and that's just not the case here. There's plenty of getting a bit of a toffee.
It's got a nice hoppiness to the nose. I like that a lot. And this beer, again, even the on the back of the can, for those of you that have the can with you, how else would you be doing this? What are you shotgunning the beer in
mason
and
jars
away
or something?
Well, we do know the people in our tasting. It's not up to Eric and I, by the way, to vacuum up all the air in the comments tonight, so we are looking forward to some of the chirps coming our way. But anyway, they do note that the malt that's being used in order to make this beer is not a commonly malted malt anymore, and you can taste there's just a hint of ashiness on it, and it's absolutely delightful for those of us that sort of pine after beers from a bygone era. So this is one of those.
I had suggested earlier that maybe they had changed the recipe, or that red shed malting had been brought into the recipe, but apparently the beverage here and red shed malting in Red Deer are the same age. So Blindman, Red Shed started making this together. What's special about the 24-2, and I'm not sure how well you know your Range Roads, but Range Road 24 is just east of Red Deer, where I grew up. And the 24-2 is the name given to the farm and to the draft horses at the 24-2 Draft Horse Farm, where they're growing the malt. And that malt has been planted in collaboration with Blindman. We have some photos here as well, Aaron and Sky, courtesy of 24-2's Facebook page. And my surprise in doing this research was 24-2 Draft Horses is actually run by Cam and Melinda Anderson, who my wife and I grew up with in Red Deer.
Great.
Weird, right?
Yeah, weird. I mean, totally small world.
What's bananas about this farm, as you can see from the photos if they have come up, is they are doing all of their farming, all the tilling of the soil, and all of the harvesting of the barley is done with 19th century farm implements. These horses are actually the ones dragging the stuff around the fields to plant that barley. So it's been planted in collaboration with Blindman. One of those photos even has our friend Shane, who is one of our guests for the Andrew Hilton tasting, riding the, I don't know, the disc thingy. Sure,
just the plow.
And so it is. I don't know how many farms are like that in Alberta anymore, and it's impressive and goofy, and I thought that was a great namesake for the beverage. And so from the first year of the 24-2, that has been the process: is planting at 24-2, harvesting, taking it to Red Shed malting in Red Deer, and then malting it and roasting it on site there.
That's just a great story. All right.
So from there to Lacombe.
From the comments.
Oh,
what do we got rolling here? Ariel's going to be on me all night like a dirty shirt. I have no idea about the bourbon barrels. I don't know how old they were. I do know that they were good barrels because I've had the beer that came from them. This is all I know.
Did you steal Kyle's glass? Is the
yeah, no, from Cunningham. No, I did. This is Kyle's glass. I'm not going to do anything with it. He only had one.
Be careful.
I thought there would be two. Oh!
I don't know if they're still making that one.
No, I didn't bring one from home. So they did provide glassware, which is always good. What else crazy things do we have in here? Do we have enough material to last?
And our 24-2 is warming up a little in the glass.
Okay, so not loving. Sean's not loving the 24-2. Oh, that a few years back. Any idea if any other Alberta beers are using the 24-2 malt?
I don't believe they are, because as you can guess, if you're dragging 200-year-old farm implements behind giant horses, your output probably isn't very high. And so I would imagine there's only enough of that particular barley for that purpose. Even their website, they even list some of the destinations for that barley, and it's significantly limited. So no, I don't know how that.
It's just really cool to have a beer that has they can actually have traceability all the way back to the farm and heck to the horse that did the pulling. But yeah, that's super interesting.
Now, we are on Tasting 89, and I know that we've talked about barley and we've talked about malts with Kyle lots, but because I need to be told more than once, can we talk a little bit about barley is fairly straightforward. You've got the husk and the straw stalk that you're taking apart, and you've got the little nubbin. The fruit of the barley, and you keep using the word malting. What is malting in reference to?
Okay, so what we're going to do in the short lecture, we won't give any long lectures because there's too many people that I know.
Look at the clock, we're good.
We're okay so far? Okay, so the basic idea is the yeast is not able to, the most efficient way to store sunlight is in the form of carbohydrates. Okay, so that's what the plant is doing. It's locking up sunlight, throwing it up into carbohydrates, which are just exactly as they sound. They're water and carbon. So what we need to be able to do is break those carbohydrates down and turn them into simple sugars, because then the yeast is able to eat the sugar, and the alcohol is actually, in essence, the excrement of the yeast. So congratulations.
Raise your glass of excrement.
Raise your glasses to excrement. This is what makes all beer better. Anyway, so in order to get that process to work, you need to get something to break the carbohydrate down. So that's a long chain thing, and I'm not going to go into the chemistry, but John Ing's in the comments here tonight, so he can tell us about the chemistry. Anyway, so you're going to take that and you're going to add alpha and beta amylase into it, and that does the conversion of the starch into sugar. And once it's into that sugar form, then it can go ahead and make alcohol. But to do that, you have to first wet it, because it has to believe that it's about to grow, and then you have to stop it. So once it gets to a certain level and it's converted the starch to sugar, then, so this is done on a malting floor, so it's wetted and let sit for a little while, and then when the barley's processed with the alpha amylase gets going and the beta and the alpha get going, then you have to stop it, and you stop it with heat. All right, so if you can do it really accurately, you can stop it and not caramelize the sugar. And that would get you a very, very lightly colored malt. And if you let it go on, it just caramelizes, right? And you just kind of walk your way up the ramp. Now, there's certain different kinds and types of barleys that do these things better. And I'm no brewmaster, so we're not going to go totally into that particular rabbit hole. But that gets you to home on understanding where the color comes from. So this one here is stopped kind of 3/4 the way done. Before you eventually you just turn it into carbon. If you go too long. And just before you get to carbon, you're going to get to a chocolate malt, right? And then that's going to get really rich, really tasty. Just like any other kinds of sugars that you've had that have been caramelized. You take regular white sugar, throw it in a pan, heat it up, it tastes better. That's just life. So that's where we're at with this kind of stuff. But the one interesting thing about all of these beers, and this one does have a little bit of hops in it, is heavily malted beer can't hide. You can't cover it up with hops. So I've complained before about beers that don't have, you've got yourself a nice New England IPA, and I just call it hop juice. It's just water with hops in it, and it's got no maltiness to it, and alcohol is in there, sure, but you can make alcohol with any kind of sugar you can throw at it. Malt's expensive, typically, so, adding sugar inclusions just waters it down. That's why they add rice to beer, Budweiser, and other things. So when we have a beer like this, if you get it right, it's great. If you don't get it right, there's nowhere to hide. So you can't throw a bunch of hops on it and make it better. All right.
What does not getting it right mean for a brown ale? Where would that get away from you?
Well, it can get away from you. So when you're brewing a brown ale, it's sort of like stout is half mouthfeel. This is going to have a mouthfeel component to it as well, but it's got to taste just right. So you have to have the balance between the acidity that can come out of the mash and then what's resulting from the alcohol, as well as the sweetness. Like, how much sweetness do you want to remain? Sometimes you'd like the yeast to dissolve and eat up all the sugars, which leaves you with something that's very dry. But perceived sweetness can come from lots of different things. It doesn't just have to come from sugar. And malt is one of those things that'll taste sweet even if it's not. So it's an interesting, the science of it is kind of neat. But if it gets away from you, this beer will turn almost sour in tasting,
Oh.
right? And it'll be astringent and sour.
Like vinegar?
It can get vinegary, but then that's what my dad used to brew back in the day. Was basically a long story short. We had a lot of vinegar in our house before we started learning how to clean. Cleaning was sort of washing it a little bit with water or whatever. And no, you have to do better than that, Dad. No, and the beer would always be garbage. He liked it, but that's different. That's stories for another night. But yeah, so you've got to be careful because there's a lot of things that are fighting you and trying to make this style that we're tasting all night tonight for brewers. It's sort of like when we did the Pilsner tasting that Kyle and I did the last time I was on the show. And a Pilsner's got nowhere to hide either. I mean, it's either right, in my view, or it's garbage. And when it's right, it's brilliant. And when it's garbage, it's terrible. And these beers really run the same way. They're either right on point. The brewer really knows what they're doing because, again, they've got no chance of saving it. Like once it's in, before it's bottled, they got nothing they can do. You can't dry hop this stuff. It doesn't help it. It wouldn't represent in the style.
That, I believe, brings us to beer.
Are we at
number 2?
No, we got lots to go.
We have lots more?
We got to get to the
Goodness.
comments here.
What? Oh, I
minutes, for
forgot.
heaven's sake. Holy cow.
Doesn't bing.
We got 1 minute to go. We're good. We started a minute late.
See, they appreciated your chemistry. That was no problem at all.
that's good.
Oh, wait, unless that's sarcastic.
Well, yeah, it could be. Is it coming from a chemist? That's all I'm interested in. If it's coming from a chemist, then I'm going to take that as a high mark here.
Is that why some dark beers taste like beans?
It can be. You can get all kinds of different. There's different esters and other things that can end up in. Again, I tried to do this for years. I was telling Eric before we went on air. I used to be a heavy duty home brewer back before home brewing was a thing. Look at how old I am. So seriously, this was a long time ago. And there were 2 beer styles that I tried to specialize in, and one was trying to get a brown ale that was just right, and the other was trying to get a stout that was decent. Because in Canada at the time, you could get neither of these 2 beer styles that were any good. And I'll tell you, there was a lot of beer that went down the sink, right? Because you're trying to brew it. And this was before the internet. I mean, you're reading Zymergy, this is all you had. And you'd go in and you'd talk to the person at the beer place and you'd start your mash going. And I was into the grains and grinding my own and everything. It got to be a bit of an obsession. As you can tell, it's sort of the way I'm wired. Yeah, my wife is explaining that if you need me to shut up, I need a 1 minute warning.
Good to know.
Never
Good
a truer thing ever been said. Thanks, dear. Anyway. Yeah, Coburn complained about something. Shocked.
Not as nutty as some brown ales.
Yeah, no, and that's in the malting. That's in the malting. The nuttiness is coming straight from the malt.
So you got a YouTube comment that says, "Get Kyle to make some age branded glassware."
Yeah.
They don't have any?
Yeah, I have no idea why we don't have Andrew Hilton.
Well, we're done the
branded
posters.
glassware.
It's probably time to move on to...
Yep. Okay, now we get to open the beer that's going to make people upset. So if you didn't get this one, I'm really sorry that you didn't get this beer.
Speaking of malt backbone,
Yeah,
this is the backbone of our tasting. This is the beer that drove the choices that we made on the table today. And sneaking away.
Well, when we
for
first
us.
did this, Kyle didn't give us any instruction. He just said, do whatever you like. So then Eric and I met here on a Saturday, and we both said, do you think he'd let us taste this beer? And I didn't know. So we rolled with it. We had a backup. Don't worry, we had a backup. But when he said we could do it, we were all over it. Okay, just look at it in the glass. So this is just a little bit lighter than the 24-2. Just a little.
And the style, they're self-described as a British ale.
This is so good. Okay, so this
goodness.
has to have this sort of nice, you can get bitterness from the malt and you can get bitterness from bitters, but this is your from hops. You're getting the hop bitterness on this big time. And you've got that malty bitter overtone. This is just glorious. I could smell this beer.
I'm really glad we stuck to keeping this after the 24-2. There's a richness and a punch there that
See?
just incredible.
Aren't you glad we gave you a big bottle? They also sell it in the can, but I don't think we can get the can in Alberta. This makes you want to move to British Columbia for no other reason than this beer.
There is a bit of history with this particular brew as well. So this is from Hoyne Brewing, but it is called the Appleton, named after Frank Appleton, who apparently is the sort of godfather of craft brewing in BC. Before the internet, before access to all of that information, Frank Appleton wrote some magazine article about home brewing back in the early 80s, and Sean Hoyne, as well as others, actually had to drive around town to town trying to figure out where in the BC wilderness this guy was holed up in his log cabin, and trying to find him. And so people would come to him and bring him to the cities to help get their breweries started. And so Sean Hoyne trained under Frank Appleton, and this is his sort of tribute to his teacher.
Okay, so Sean in the comments notes that this is a proper English bitter. So this is one of the beers that I was trying to make way back in the day. It's not an E.S.B, it's just a bitter. This is actually a little high in the alcohol content for that. It's at 5.2%. So a really good pub bitter would be at like 3.5%, maybe 4% tops, and they're total session ales. But they're session ales with flavor, which is not always a thing. So lower alcohol. In fact, we noted that when we were looking through the fridge before we came on tonight. We were looking through, and it does seem to be a little bit of a trend upcoming in the beers, is that we're not saying that we're done with all this heavy alcohol stuff. That means you can't get to the fourth beer in the night. But there are some lighter beers in the fridge currently that have just been released. So we're super excited about those. There is no tasting notes for next week. I don't know what Kyle was thinking. You guys can chirp them yourself. I say, fire it in the comments. What do you want to taste next week? And
bring Craig and Eric back.
We can leave those there. But this is so a lower alcohol content beer, and this is one of them. It's only 5-ish%. I got to look at that one. 5.2. Ariel will now chirp me for having to look over my glasses to read something because I'm ancient.
Terry is sensing some dill in the okay.
Yeah, I can go with that.
There is a brightness. There is a floral quality that wasn't really in the 24-2.
And the difference in the maltiness. There's no, in the 24-2, it's almost, it's not astringent, but it's there's an earthiness to it that this does not have.
That's why I always use more than one glass. I can just jump right back to the 24-2.
Kyle only has the one glass, so I'm using it for all it's worth. Kyle, buy more glasses.
And the nuttiness may not have been very forward when we were enjoying this, but jumping back to that from the bitter is it comes out a little more.
And we will do that tonight because that's a Coburn household tradition, is that we go back through the lineup, or at least I do. My wife usually just looks at me and continues to do whatever she's doing, wonders, and she's like, which ones am I putting away tonight? That's
been one of my biggest learning experiences with the tastings, is how much that context matters.
Yeah.
I might not enjoy one that much or not find it that exciting, and then I have it out in a different context or on its own, and it just behaves completely differently in relationships. So we were pretty careful about the beverages we brought in here. The hand.
Oh, there's a big ball. It's the last one in the Lethbridge, though, so careful now.
Oh, somebody says it's Blackbridge Brewing next week.
Could be. It all depends on how many votes we get.
Smells like a milk house.
Smells like a milk house. It has a sort of...
I might need some context for talking about a dairy barn.
Dairy barn, yeah. That's what you're referring to, are you not, Cunningham? Dairy barn time.
Why would that be? Is it the moisture in the hay?
There is sort of a, it's not hay, it's silage. Anyone?
Oh.
Should I just go away now? Start talking. Is this the first time we've mentioned silage on the channel? I'm fairly certain this is the first silage mention on the channel. But yeah, there's a sweet. I mean, again, that's fermented anyway. So
I think we've mentioned melted birthday cake on the channel, but never silage.
This does have that. Maybe that's why I like it. I don't know why I like this beer. I just love this beer.
Jeremy's suggesting it's the yeast.
Could be it. These ale yeasts do impart quite a few esters into the beer, and did they list this one? You did the research on this one.
For the hops?
Did they list the yeast? I know they've listed the yeast for 24.2 has the yeast listed. But sometimes even the changing of the yeast is going to change the esters, right? Because that's the other thing that the yeast is leaving behind on the way by.
Brags about the Simpson's Golden Promise malted barley, but it doesn't identify the yeast.
Okay.
And they have been making this apparently since 2011.
Yeah.
And so that strain would be well established by now, whatever that is.
Yeah. Oh, YouTube on us.
Here we go. We missed out on the E.S.B, so we're subbing Blindman's Full Circle Rogan Beer.
Oh, good. Good choice. Good choice.
And so tell us about a Rogan
That's
Beer.
the rye beer, right? So the Rogan beer is the rye beer, so that's got the extra spiciness to it.
Is that'll have a pepperiness to it?
Yeah, rye beers often have that. They're a devil to work with. I've never brewed with rye before. It was hard enough for me to brew these things without having to dump half of them out.
So as a home brewer, why were you starting with these as your first beers? It can't because they're easiest.
Masochism, yes, masochism is the answer for that. No, I wanted to drink that beer. It was a beer that I used to enjoy when I lived in the UK for a few years. And returning to Canada, you just found this entire beer desert, right? It was all sorts of Molson Canadian nonsense. It was just not worth drinking. And you could get Guinness, but it was in a bottle and it was rubbish. I don't know if you remember that. It was terrible.
Yeah.
It always was sour and old and nasty. It was horrible. And like Guinness pulled from a tap is just there's a thing of beauty right there. You can get that now. Right? But you can't, of course. This is over 20. That's almost 30 years ago. I just wanted to brew those beers specifically. So you start off with brewing a pale ale, and then you immediately think you can jump into something as complicated as this. You can't. You can't do it. Trust me, you can't be done. I did manage to get myself. I even brewed a spruce beer. A friend of mine was commenting on that when he viewed the promo. He's like, "I remember your spruce beer." Well, that's 30 years ago, and the guy he probably still has the aftertaste. It's really what's going on here. He's probably still.
That would be really oily and like a resin.
It was delicious because instead of finishing it with hops, I went and it was in the spring and
it's the finish.
You pull the fresh. Don't pull the old spruce needles.
They should be really soft.
They're really soft. You pull all those off of a tree. I used a Norway spruce. I pulled all the spruce, the fresh buds off, and then I threw those. I cut them all up, and I finished with that, and it tasted vaguely of Pepsi. Like it had like a maltiness to it with sort of a Pepsi overtone, and it kicked like a mule. It was about 6.5% alcohol. My friends loved it. I used to like brew beer, and then I would serve it to my friends. Because I didn't know any other way of getting rid of it. I would drink as much as I could, but you had to brew 5 gallons at a time, which is insane. So it was tough to do. You haven't seen Chad Takayashi around here for a long time. He's only the brew guy I know. Okay, so that's good for time.
Pretty good.
We're doing good.
Excellent.
2 beers in, 26 minutes. So says Clock Kent.
A little bit of structure isn't so bad.
And we're getting better looking and funnier as we go. This is all we need to know.
You mentioned the desert that was Alberta beer, but that wasn't always the case, was it? So before Prohibition, you would see porters and you would see stouts and you would see the different wheat beers and things like that. I think of even just to be looking at the history of labels for design, like I like to, you see the variety of beverages, or to even go to the Galt and to see all the different kinds of beers that were happening before the war.
Even here in Lethbridge, right? Lethbridge Lager.
Yeah.
So all kinds of history there. It's great, but then all of that, I mean, it gets consolidated into mass industrial chemistry. That's really what ends up happening with the beer industry, and it's just a vehicle for sending beer to the masses.
And Prohibition played a big role in that because the biggest companies could survive selling medicinal or selling soda or whatever, and all the little companies that would have really brought the diversity to that, they all would have fallen away. They couldn't survive the drought during the Prohibition.
And this is why we have to keep drinking these beers, because we cannot go through that again.
And it's why we like to talk about who's making these beers and where they're coming from and the stories behind them, because that's something special that we couldn't have had the conversation in the same way 20 years ago.
Oh, such a treat to be able to have the actual, the brewmasters and come in and like speak to us from the breweries on this channel. It's just been extraordinary. It's one of the things I guess we don't thank Andrew Hilton enough for this. We don't thank Kyle enough for this. I always try to give him credit for this, and he's really he just doesn't want the credit. But honestly, could we have survived this last 2 years without this tasting? Like, I'm 89 for 89, folks. Like, go hard. And if it hadn't been for, like, this has been brilliant. Like, Eric and I, we only met in the comments. We've only met in person twice, but I think we've chatted in the comments about 8 million times. And it's, it's good for all of our mental health. I think this is just, hey, I mean, for all of us that are here, hats off to Andrew Hilton for being able to support us, even if it's just to bring us some beer. But it's just been such a brilliant ride in a very dark time.
It's a testament to Kyle as well that we are pushing 90 of these tastings, and he is just got so much information, so much knowledge, or he knows where to find it. And it's, for me, even the repeat ones where we're bringing back recipes that we've had before, I've always found that valuable. And even pushing our 90th tasting, and I'm still going to ask you in a few minutes what difference between a porter and a stout. But we are probably ready for our dark horse, so to speak.
The beer that no one admits to making. No, they admit to making it. They just don't admit to what it is.
So we're actually back to Hoyne in Victoria.
Back to Hoyne.
So the dark matter is from Hoyne in Victoria.
Slide this over here.
I thought this was something new and goofy. That's not the case.
Oh.
Apparently, when Sean Hoyne was finished with his training and struck out on his own with his own brewery, that was, wow.
Oh, look at the head, though. Head retention.
Apparently, this is one of the original lineup.
Okay, but watch the color. I don't know if you guys can get that. I don't know if you can follow me over to the light.
Yeah,
is that going to work?
Yeah.
Sorry, Aaron. Should apologize. Aaron's been great.
Go up a bit.
Sky's been good, too. He's just sitting over there being kind.
Taking care of those YouTube folks.
Can you see that? If you can see through it, you'll notice that it's more brown than red. This is important, folks. This is important.
All I'm getting are Sky's console lights on my.
Okay, Eric, hold yourself.
We'll get it through one of these lights.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's better. Okay.
Beautiful.
Okay, so if we have a look at that, so just look at it at home. Have a good look at it. You'll notice it's more brown than red, and the head that's produced from it is white, not brown. So this was a comment that I had in the comments last week, and I was chirping Kyle, as is my habit, because I wasn't drinking out of his glass, so I might as well be getting up his nose. And I said this was the difference between stouts and porters, right? Because somebody had asked, and it's a little bit more in depth than that. But what's going on with this beer? Kyle and I, Kyle wasn't even here when we tasted this beer. Who was here with us? Mike. It was you, me, and Mike.
Yes, on the Saturday, yeah.
On the Saturday, and we had a sip, and we were like, wow, this is so bright. Like, on the nose, it's just like there's sort of a butteriness to it.
So we're not looking at a porter, we're not looking at a stout.
We're not looking at anything. No one admits to what this thing is, but I'll tell you, it's heading a lot more towards a single style of beer that we're pretty confident. This has started out as kind of a Baltic lager thing, so it's black but white. So I'll explain that because that makes no sense.
Why is lager coming to mind? Why
okay, so in terms of the maltiness of it, it's got tons of flavor, but they're not a malted flavor. Okay, this is it's like coffee to me, right? So there's a roastiness to it. So this is going to be a black malt of some sort, but the head that's being produced is white. There's no doubt in here, right? Now there's a little bit you can see here, just down at the bottom end. You can actually watch that gradation, and it gets a little bit more dark as it comes in contact with the beer. It's just getting a little darker down there, and that's showing you that it's got some other malts that are in there for sure. There's a brilliant nuttiness to it, but in terms of the malt component, wait until we get to the last one. This is why we're going to go back, right? Because it's important to do the cycle here for this one, because we're, class is in session, folks. So when we get rolling on this one, you'll notice like a lot of the beers that are sort of this variety, they have inclusions in the grain bill that leads them to a dark character, but they might have a malt that's actually pretty light, right? So they may not have like a dark malt. It might be a pale ale style malt. It won't be something into that sort of crystal malt range. It's not going to be heavily caramelized. So it doesn't have a lot of caramel notes. It doesn't have a lot of chocolate notes. It's got a ton of flavor though. The meeting beer flavor. Those are my meetings primarily that McHugh's talking about. For all the people that wonder about the meeting comments, he's usually sniping me. He's trying to tell me my meetings are so boring that he needs to drink.
Deirdre is getting chestnuts off of this one.
Yep. So much nuttiness, and that's coming from something that's roasted, not something that's malted. Okay, so the maltiness is just like the malted milk. I couldn't believe people didn't know that malted milk came from barley.
Okay, Grandpa.
Maybe it's a Manitoba thing, right? But there was like a malt shop in the mall when I was a kid, and we knew it. And you could even get it. Like, I don't know if this, maybe it's not an Alberta thing, maybe it's a Manitoba thing, but you used to be able to get malt in a tin. Like, how old am I? This is the question. Internet, tell me. About 1 million years
Somebody
old.
here is going to know that they already have it at Superstore or something like that.
Yeah, probably.
That they still have it. Chris is getting some cherry. Megan notes that it's feeling a little empty in the middle.
Well, as it should, right? There's no, like, the maltiness is actually pretty mild in this beer. Again, look to the head. This is no different than, again, I would say, again, this is sort of like one of those, the Baltic lager type things. Like, it's that is probably where they started, and things might have got a little out of control in the recipe, and then they went, oh my, we've created something that really is quite different. But I think of this as being almost stout in character, but it has no ashen characteristics. Like, to be a good stout, it's got to be a little ashy, right? But stouts don't have a ton of, like, really heavy maltiness to them. What stouts have is darkness and color and a ton of flavor coming from essentially turning the barley into, like, coffee, right? So you're not malting it. You're not turning it into sugar first. You're allowing that process to take place actually in the tank, right? So that you've got you're actually taking barley and you just roasted it the same way you'd roast coffee. And you fire it off into your mash, and then it's got the long chains in there, and then the alpha and beta amylase are going to have to take that apart in, like, actually, while it's fermenting. They'll be consuming it and then turning it into sugar, and then you'll end up with residual sugars in it.
That would mean this would be a longer brewing.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Much longer than the...
Well, stouts, you can do a stout in a few days. It's not drinkable anyway. It takes a little bit of time. Again, I wish there was somebody that had, like, again, I only brewed about 5 stouts until I could get it dialed in, but that's 25 gallons worth of experimentation before you could go, yeah, I think I've got it about right. It was devilishly difficult to get it right, especially that it was tough because they advise very strongly when you're putting the barley in, the roasted barley, to be really careful with your pH because it gets really acidic. And it's one of the reasons these beers just plain ordinary work. Like, these all emanate from the UK, and the water that's there naturally completely full of, it's all going to be alkaline, right? So that when they brew something that's acidic, it doesn't much matter. It cancels itself out and brings the pH back down to about where it should be. So it's an interesting process. But it's really tricky if you're brewing it in Canada. You do have to adjust your water profiles. That's why when I'm drinking these beers, it's like an honor to drink these beers, because these guys, they know what they're doing, because nothing here is a mess.
Which isn't to say if you're putting marshmallows or chocolate nubbins or whatnot into your porters and stouts, but one thing that has just been fantastic learning more about dark beers is the diversity of flavor and the richness and complexity that they're getting with just their basic building blocks of what makes an ale or what makes a beer.
Well, Chris makes a really great comment here, which is if you let it sit in your mouth. I love doing this when I'm at home, often getting rushed because we don't have Clock Kent to keep us honest. But if we have Clock Kent to keep us honest, you do let it develop. These sorts of beers develop on your palate. There's this, I mean, they may be sessionable, but they're not quaffable in that way. Like, you can't just gun them down. This is not a good after the hockey game in the dressing room beer. This is not that. This is a beer to be sat with and experienced. I don't remember what the alcohol is on it. They admit to that? Where the heck is that? 5.3, keeping it light. That's pretty good.
Is that suitable to this style if it is indeed a dark lager?
Yeah, dark lager shouldn't be any stronger than 6, because then you end up into another class, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, and it would have to be, you're going to risk having residual sugars And you don't really want that. You want that nice balance. This beer is like Hoyne, holy cow. We've not had them on the tasting before. We should have them on the tasting more often. I don't know how available they are in Alberta. I know that they've got the order in for the Appleton.
And then learning that Sean Hoyne is a legacy brewer in British Columbia.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. You mentioned seeing diversity of brews. Apparently, when he first started out with his own brewery, it was a lot of these bitters and ales. There wasn't a lot of lagering happening, and apparently that's his favorite style to make. So keep an eye out, hopefully, for some Hoyne brews coming. Sean mentions that Untapped lists this as a dark ale. So other than Sean, don't believe everything you read on the internet. Do you have any thoughts on that?
On tap, this would be a dark ale.
Untapped. Sorry, the Untapped website.
Untapped website.
Yeah.
No, I don't believe it. I mean, it could have been made with an ale yeast. It could have been made as I don't think it's been lagered, but I think that's what they were starting. Like Kyle and I had a chat about this last week. We were shooting the promo. We think this is what they were trying to make. It's not what they ended up making. Again, the brewer doesn't admit to what this is. They do not tell you what it is.
They take pride in not telling us what it is.
When have you ever seen this? Now, normally when the brewer doesn't admit to what they made, it's because it's garbage. It's not because it's genius, and there's a real difference here. And there's a ton in the fridge. Like, there's a flat worth in the fridge. Why is it in the fridge? It should be in your fridge. No, this is crazy.
And that's a big thing that
hear.
we're learning about Hoyne, and hoping to see more of that coming in Alberta.
Oh, more of this stuff should come to Alberta for sure. For sure. Cunningham says, put more of it in my mouth. Okay, Jay,
Your meetings must be a lot of fun.
He's not in my department yet.
Is it time? How are we doing?
We're doing okay.
We're
doing okay.
All right.
Clock Kent.
Well
Clock Kent.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
And
Kent Clockman is.
enough
Clockman.
flexibility to jump back a cup
Oh yeah.
to enjoy that hoppiness.
I could drink that one all day. That one's just
Fantastic.
so good.
Very nice.
Okay, last beer.
All right. We're still in Victoria. This is Driftwood, which we have had a time or two on the tasting. I'm admittedly not that familiar with
Fat
Driftwood.
Tug.
Fat Tug is fairly famous.
That's all I know about Driftwood.
Look at that.
Kyle will be just groaning.
Look
so let's have a look. There's the difference. Okay, so if you went back to the dark matter, note the head is brown. It's exactly what you should be finding in a porter. Okay, so all stouts. So this is the stout and porter routine, if you want. So Jay can tell me to, keep drinking and shut up now, but here we go. All right, so porter is the base beer. That's where it starts. Then you get strong porter, which is stout. Okay, now that becomes very popular. This is 300 years ago, so just try to stick with the bouncing ball. Then what happens is the government finds out that it's really popular, and they decide that they're going to tax the malt. So they bring in a malt tax, because governments do these things. They bring in a malt tax, so then the brewers drop the alcohol content. Okay, then porter almost disappears as a brewing style. Like, not quite, but again, where's Kyle? Great argument with Kyle about this stuff. We should be in the back room just hammering away at this stuff. But it kind of drops away, and stout kind of sticks around because it's really popular. Because at this point, it's about as strong a beer as you can get, and it's riding around 4 or 4.5%, which in today's world is like light beer. Okay, so what's missing? What's the difference? The primary difference between the two in terms of the grain bill is a stout will have that barley that's been roasted but not malted, right? And a porter will have a dark malted barley. I mean, it could be a chocolate, it could be all kinds of things in there. They don't have a ton of it because it can lead to a really medicinal taste in your beer, which is the thing that you're fighting against all the time for balance. But in your glass, cheers, folks. Notice the difference. This has got like legs for miles.
You said chocolate. You mean a style malt, not...
It means it's literally the color of chocolate. It ends up with chocolate notes. It tastes chocolatey. There's no friggin' chocolate in this beer. This is what we know. That's all coming off the malt. All of it.
If you visit a malting or a brewery and they've got roasted malts on hand, the comparison to roasted coffee beans is really, really obvious. You've got the aromas, you've got that same color to the grains.
Yeah, and the can art is just otherworldly on this. I love that. In fact, the can art on all of these is really good.
Hoyne's,
Hoyne's
Appleton is a beauty. Absolutely. We've got a question here. Hang on.
Just a comment.
Comment.
It's got quite a bit of zip, like a coffee hazelnut soda.
Yeah, but nothing's in it that's coffee or hazelnut or any of that stuff. This is one of the reasons we picked it, and we hadn't tasted it when we picked it. We picked it because we hadn't tasted it. Come on, like that's part of the point of the tasting. But when I first tasted it at home, I went, wow, now there's a really nice, straightforward, not trying to be something it's not. That's just porter, right? It's not often you get that. Like everyone needs to dress up their porter with marshmallows and cacao nibs and other silliness. And you're like,
so that commenter on YouTube, they're describing a fairly complex taste, and that's all coming from precision malting from the brewing process.
Yeah, this is all malt, nothing in it that's not malt, and it's 6%. It's exactly what it should be. It's a good, honest porter. Now, we've had a lot of dark beers, but it's winter. It was 40 below today. Enjoy your friggin' porter. That's what it's meant for.
There should be ice on the windows when you're enjoying a porter.
Driftwood has actually stopped. This used to be part of their core. They've stopped making it as part of their core. It's now a seasonal. And it's because people are wusses and they don't want to drink this stuff in the summertime. Apparently, my meetings are so boring that McHugh will drink a porter in the summertime.
I have to say that enjoying a porter and smelling campfire smoke at the same time is pretty special.
That would be awesome.
Porters and evening stars go together very well.
Yeah.
Very nice. Now, 90 tastings in, and porter and stout. You've talked a little bit about the difference between them having malted roasted barley and just roasted barley. Mm-hmm. But the phrasing that I've heard is that every stout is a porter, but not every porter is a stout. Is there truth to that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, if we just start in the general categorization of dark beer, they're all going to be dark. How do they get the darkness in them? You're either going to roast something or you're going to caramelize something. The stouts derive from porters, but at that point, there's that bifurcation. Then the interesting part that I've always found is at the end, what's the classic stout? Sort of the Irish dry. So a Guinness would be the sort of classic sort of stout style, which most people are after. We're going to leave the coffees and the everything else out of it. But when we look at that, it's 4% alcohol. So it started off as being a strong beer, but because of that taxation thing and gaming the industry, it stopped being so strong. Porters usually come in now even stronger than stouts, but then stouts have multiple styles. So you're like, what is going on with this whole, well, you know what it is? 300 years of evolution is what it is. And we no longer really, like, so there's, you know, there's a branch to the, like there's a trunk to the tree, and there's branches that are shooting off, and they're kind of going off in all directions at this point, right? We won't mention all the things, but that definitely was a mistake.
We cut that branch off. We're fine.
Yeah, we can lop that one off and then bury it dead. I still have I still wake up in the night screaming, and it's that beer that does it. It's just it was the worst. It was the worst. I mean, I don't want to drink banana muffins. Like there's just never in my life have I thought I could really go for a whizzed up banana muffin right now. I don't know what they were thinking when they brewed that garbage.
Damien's getting a lot of saltiness from this one. And I think as it's warming up in the glass that I'm seeing a bit of that. Damien also had a really good question about Hoyne, and are they going to be moving from the glassware to more of the cans? Based on the information that I've seen on their social media, they are, even the Appleton that we have here is being released in a beautifully designed can. Like you said, I don't know that those are coming to Alberta. I think that the heritage nature of the glassware is a pretty big deal to them, but there's no way around the fact that cans are kind of where everything's going. They also made some interesting comments about because they're bringing in their own canning equipment, that they're able to have the control that they have with the glassware, and that could be a part of that as well.
Well, all of these brewers back in the day would have been brewing in the and these bombers, right? The 500.
Even
mils.
just talking to brewers in Calgary, it is a full-time job to figure out the logistics of when these mobile canning trucks are coming through and timing them with your different brews, or if you're like cabin and you're brewing off-site as well as in-house, and I can't even imagine the logistics behind making things end up in the cans fresh, which is still what we're seeing from all these places in Calgary.
It's staggering to me as often as we talk about it, like how few people are involved in the industry. Like that does that shock anyone else, or is that just me? It could just be me. But it's not like you're dealing with armies of people. Like somebody's doing the can artwork, and they need recognition for this because they do a heck of a good job. Somebody's doing, like, there's a mobile canning guy. There's like a contract brewing. Like I didn't realize there was this few people that were involved in this particular industry, which is kind of neat. Right, so if we look at that, it's very cottage in nature, which is cool.
Even in a boom.
Even in a boom, yeah. Like it's experiencing. I mean, I wonder if that's going to happen over time. If we're going to see the smaller breweries, like you've got the little brewery roll in Calgary, is that going to start collapsing into what, like establishment or or annex, or somebody is going to like take over? They appear to all be very friendly.
They seem to be approaching it like musicians, where they're collaborating, they're seeing one success as success for everybody. It would just take one player who doesn't see things that way.
My guess is, they all go to Olds College and they learn how to brew good beer, and they didn't end up going to a business school, and that was a good thing. So far, it's worked out for all of us. How can they actually? The number of collaborations is. Well, I mean, I like it. I think this is great. When you're working in a small industry like that, where there's not 100 people in the brewery, there's going to be maybe 10, that kind of thing, running the place. And they have to rely on outside people to do canning. They have to get bottling lines to work. They've got all kinds of supply issues and things that are going on. And yet they're still able to do innovative collaboration. They're still, like, this is coming out of the crazy minds of people. That's neat. It's so much better than industrial chemistry. No offense to the chemists. I don't want to upset the chemists. Settle down, chemists. Are there any chemists here tonight? Do they know how to have fun other than
You're being told to preach.
But there's a piece to that. I mean, I think we're both at an age now where we're no longer, I always say, we're no longer drinking for volume. We're drinking because it's interesting, right? I mean, this is interesting beer. It's got a story to tell. Right, and there's history to all of it. I mean, I had no idea about the 24-2 that started off
amongst
tonight.
their logistics. They had to find time to do a photo shoot sitting in the archaic farm equipment.
I mean, they're literally like, a horse is out making your beer. Like, what is this, 1890? Like, that's so cool.
To be clear, it was the yeast excrement we're referring to, not the horse. Damien has a really good point here. Does feel like there's a taste difference from bottled to can. I felt the difference from Driftwood's move to canning. And I think that it's interesting that we're talking about beers that could age well, but we don't do that in cans, do we?
No, we would do that in barrels because nothing for it to react in. I mean, glass is inert. There's a coating on the inside of the can, so people that go, I don't like cans, I'm like, Again, I'm no expert in this stuff, so I'm not 100% sure. I know I prefer, like, that's why I'm always asking Kyle about the growler bar.
Oh.
And I didn't look at the thingy. It's right there. Where's the thingy? Aaron, what's on the growler bar tonight?
We got Good Morning Vietnam.
Oh, Good Morning Vietnam. There's a coffee stout you need to drink. Really, seriously. Good Morning Vietnam.
Establishment Picture of Nectar.
I don't know that one.
It's hazy.
88 Night Gallery.
Oh,
And Annex Easy Answers Pale, which is light.
I don't.
0.8.
The Easy Answers is one of those under 4% ales. There's 2 or 3 that we saw in the fridge tonight, and I think that's an exciting avenue of trends where they're not trying to knock your socks off. The Easy Answers I got to try yesterday. Lots of flavor, big body for a 3.8%.
Is that next week? Is that next week? Beers that aren't trying to kill you?
Lighter, yeah.
Like, I like that. Like, kind of like I could go for that.
Sure.
Beers that aren't trying to kill you. Because honestly, some of these it's no Imperial Stout tasting. That was still probably the best totally in the rhubarb, skidded into the ditch early, and just stayed there for the tasting.
Some people stayed home the next day.
It was so much fun. It was so much fun. And then there was elements of it not so much fun. But yeah, like a beer that doesn't want to kill you tasting, I could go for that. There's so much more. Like, again, we're only at, well, next week will be 90.
Yeah.
So there's only, like, we're only at 90. Like, we're not stopping. We're not, like, we got to get to whatever.
And the way Alberta's going, we're going to have plenty of new recipes and batches of
always a new
favorite
thing
things try.
always a new thing to go. Okay, so should we? Now we got like 7 minutes to go. Do you want to go back to the 24 too?
Yes.
Yeah, Eric, I think you have it right here. This is...
With the extra cups?
Yeah,
right?
The whole
Right?
spread out in
You
front.
get to jump, you get to see color comparisons.
Yeah.
I'm visual. I've got to.
Yeah. Way to go.
Artist versus scientist.
That earthiness,
Artist wins.
that tang that it's got. How do I?
Oh, see, it's nicer now.
Yeah.
It's nice. Now, maybe it's because it's warmer. These beers
Is it really
can be
less
drunk
sweet?
warm.
Is it really less sweet than the others?
I would make that case though. These beers can be drunk room temperature, no problem, as long as your room temperature is below about 19 degrees Celsius. So they can be drunk. If it's above that, then really, I'll be sweating so much it would be ridiculous. But as long as it's around that temp, you can drink these, like you can warm them in your hand. They're fine. Other beers will start to taste really sour and foul at those kinds of temperatures.
Oh, really? Okay.
They need the reduction in temperature so that you can get rid of the estery nonsense that's going on in the glass. This stuff, that's now been sitting for 50 minutes, 55, a little bit more than that.
My general rule is with these family of beers to 20 minutes out of the fridge before before drinking. Is that enough time? Because this is really
lightly
there's a lot
I don't
going on
mind
here.
these at I don't mind this at this temperature, like where it is right now. It's just primo. You get a little bit more. There's more roundness to the beer.
The finish is much fuller.
Just more.
Yeah.
Anyways, Terry's got a 2-4.
Oh,
If
goodness.
I could do the Kyle thing.
ratings.
Okay, so there's 2, 4, 3, 1.
Fancy Eric and his
Oh,
fancy
no love for. Anyways, go back
look-
and try 24 too. Hey, we're gonna walk it back through real quick. We got 7 minutes before we're gonna burn it. Who's colleague? McHugh.
It's fancy Eric and his fancy glasses.
Let's see here.
Little bit of Hoynes.
Oh, that's good. Okay, we go back to Hoyne's.
That bitterness that just is not in the other three.
It's okay.
That,
My wife is coming
really
to pick me up
sets it
later.
apart.
She knew this one was not going to be a drive home kind of event.
Thank you for being safe.
Oh, this is ever nice.
Isn't that something?
I mean, okay, when Eric and I picked this beer, what did we tell you? It's the best beer in the store, bar none. I couldn't believe 6 months ago it was in the fridge, and I couldn't believe it was always in the fridge. I kept saying, like, what's wrong with you, Lethbridge? Drink this stuff. Like, it's ridiculous.
We'll probably live to regret that because we were enjoying being able to get it anytime we
make
wanted
more.
it. Oh, good.
They'll
good,
make
good.
more. And
Th-
people will
they'll bring
forget.
it in.
We were pretty memorable, but I don't know if we're that.
That is just, it's really special. It's just fantastic.
There's so much good in that.
Jeremy says 3124. Dave and Krista 3214.
Oh, John Ing says number
Going
2
back
comes
to
across
2.
bland after the other two, and I disagree, John. Clear your glass, buddy. I mean, you know.
4 glasses.
Yeah,
4 glasses.
four glasses, or at least give it a swill and then try again, bud. You're not looking for all the complexity of the last beer. I love arguing with Johnny. John's a goalie, okay? So you know,
So
one too many pucks
there
in
isn't
the head.
chocolatiness, there isn't the deep roastedness going on, but bland's just not there. It's just
But
way
on
up here.
the nose, come with me on the adventure. Really, just like this on the nose. Like you could nose this beer all day long, and the wine people will still be wandering around wondering what they're doing. So good. Aaron's coming in.
So there is some reason to keep it down to 45. Well,
You got to start accounting
fantastic.
for things. I mean, chemist, goalie. There's a lot of stuff in there.
143 blank. Damien has left 2 off the list.
Does not like 2.
More for us. 3-1 for. Oh, some people didn't get to have 2. That's why.
Oh, they
2 is
didn't
falling
have
off.
2. Oh,
I'm
that
really
makes us bad people, doesn't
Oh,
it?
dear.
Oh, we're bad people. We're
Do a
terribly
little
sorry.
screen capture here. Make sure you get a good look at that beautiful label. And
Yes.
come on in. You said Friday.
Friday.
Anymore?
They'll have more on Friday, and they have it on a regular order. So as soon as they get down, this was the problem, is Kyle didn't tell us what we could or couldn't do. So we just did whatever we thought we should do, which is what we did. Now, we told him weeks ago what we were going to do. So you'd imagine there might be systems here at the store to account for this. Where's Kyle? He's not even in
Wait,
the
you didn't go
comments,
buying
right?
a bunch while the tasting was being lined up, did you?
I only bought 2. Research is important. Actually, I still have 1 at home, so I only had 1. But anyway, they do have it on a regular order. As soon as it gets down below a certain stock level, then it gets reordered automatically. They achieved that as the last person came in and snagged the last tasting, and then they stiffed the other people who weren't able to get this brilliant beer. Come on in on Friday, buy the beer. You will not regret it.
Before we wrap up, Craig, if people want to hang out with you a little more online, where could they do that?
Are you talking about my other online life? If you like cars, then I'm Throttle Stop Garage on YouTube. So you can come on over and join the hilarity as I build a car in my garage all by myself.
You can imagine how fastidious and purposeful he is when looking at how he tastes beer, knowing that how he would treat metal and.
Look, OCD is a problem. How do I deal with it?
Put it to work.
I built a carbon fiber car in my garage. Don't do this, people. Spend your time and your money better. Now, my wife has no doubt where the money goes. She tries to hide the beer that's hiding in the background on her Zoom meetings, right? And then there's the car stuff, which occupies the rest of the house, which is always terrible. Anyway. All right, last beer in the last go through.
Thank you so
What are
much, Craig,
yours?
for hanging out with
Did
us.
you
Oh, I did not.
rate?
Oh, I
Hey,
don't.
Eric, you go.
I don't rate.
You don't rate beer? Okay,
I don't
do.
rate them because they're so different.
sure,
Yes, there's some that are stinkers,
sure.
but for the most part, I just don't rate them because they're each one I'm learning something new from. Each one is telling me a little bit something different about beer history.
Good attitude.
And I think I've made it pretty clear that Hoyne's is my favorite in the shop, but the Appleton.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've just been so.
Best of luck.
This is a very strong lineup, and nobody deserves to be last.
No, it would be tough to rank this because we're not dealing in the same style, right? So it's kind of a hard one, but
I think
mean-
it was important that they were all here together on the table today.
well, is this was the objective. Eric and Craig's ode to malt. That was the point. Something a little different, something to bring to all of you for tuning in and suffering with us in the comments. It's been nice to be chirped tonight. It's been great. I've just been called rude by John Ing, which is high praise, actually. given that John's a chemist and a goalie. There's a lot of chemicals and a lot of pucks at the head, and he can still string a sentence together. That's good stuff. Now, I would go 1, and then you know what? I'm gonna go 2.
Really?
Yeah, it's so good. It's so
really
good.
is.
It really. I mean, it's a quintet. I'd love to have. I mean, I know we can't do a porter night, but because it's hard to get just straight porter that isn't like it hasn't gotten all yuppie on us.
This is the one.
know?
This is the one.
That would be one of the ones. And then I would go 3, and then I would go 4 actually. But the 24-2, I would drink the 24-2 all day long. See, which is terrible. So
Maybe it's the community art teacher in me. I just don't want to put anyone last space. But
I do believe
they all
you're
have
right.
something solid to bring, and fantastic experience.
No,
Thank
I
you
mean-
very much.
Well, no, thank you. This was fun.
Very enjoyable. And thank you to all you folks for hanging out with us. And this is Craig and Eric signing off from Andrew Hilton. Stay tuned for social media. Find out what's going on next Wednesday for the beer tasting. Until then, we'll see you. Stay safe out there.
Keep your stick on the ice.